Hello and welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with amazing people from all around the world and look for ways to create a clean, green, and sustainable future for us, the planet, and all beings. I'm your host, Tom Simak, a fellow plant eater who strives to optimize every living ecosystem, passionate about looking after this beautiful floating rock we call home and all the lovely creatures that dwell among it. Today, we'll be talking with Yadira Saldana. Yadira is a food scientist with over a decade of experience in the food industry and academia, including food policy. She has volunteered in the animal rescue community and science communication initiatives. She is the executive director over at Cellular Agriculture Canada. Cellular Ag is where Yadira's beliefs, expertise, and interests come together. We'll be talking all about this relatively new field of cell ag and how it all works. We'll be covering the basics for those of you who haven't heard of this technology and might not know its place in today's society. But we'll also be diving into the future possibilities and how this technology could really affect us all and how it can be evolved to become super efficient. I'm really excited to share this conversation because I believe this can have a tremendous impact on the absolute catastrophe that is the climate emergency we are facing today. Not only that, but it has the possibility of sparing the billions of lives of the animals that humans consume each year. So I'm more than excited to see where this technology grows in the next few years. And this conversation, was really amazing. And I felt like I learned a lot from Yadira, and the possibilities, as you'll come to know, are almost literally endless. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation, and I will see you on the other side. Hi, Yadira. How are you going?
Good. Thanks for inviting me, Tom. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm so glad. There's so much I want to cover, and there's no better time than now, especially talking about the field of cellular agriculture, which has really boomed in the past 8 or 9 years. So you've been working with cellular ag for a little bit now. Can you give us a 101 basic description of what meat agriculture or cultivated meat is?
Yeah, sure. I can explain you a little bit what's cellular agriculture. So let's imagine cellular agriculture as an umbrella field that allows us to produce agricultural products using cells instead of the actual plant or animal. So within cellular agriculture, we can find two basic technologies that are allowing us to do this. One of them is using tissue engineering, and the other one is using microorganisms or fermentation based. So when I talk about tissue engineering, is basically we're going to use cells that come from either animals or plants. And those cells are the ones that we're going to culture and we're going to use to produce, for example, meat, which is one of the most common products. And when I talk about fermentation, we're using microorganisms, as they are cells as well. These microorganisms are going to be like the machinery that we're going to use to produce other type of products, such as dairy or egg, for example.
That's
awesome. That's like the basic overview of cellular agriculture.
And how did you even get into working in this field? It's quite a specific field. How do you just stumble across it?
That's a really interesting question. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and exactly how I got involved with cellular agriculture. 2 years ago, I was finishing my postdoc at the Ivy Business School here in London, Ontario, Canada. And I was wondering what to do with my life, which is a common question after being in academia for such a long time. And I wanted to be involved. I've always loved food science and the agri-food sector, but I also started to be really involved in science communication initiatives. And I realized how important it is to translate or to share science with the general public. and trying to look for opportunities or other options for me that were outside academia. I started looking on internet, of course, and I came across an article talking about the burger, the first cellular agriculture culture meat burger produced by Dr. Mark Posts in the Netherlands. And when I started reading about this article, I was just fascinated. I always said it was almost like love at first read. And I was like, I really want to work in this field. It has so much potential. And then I started looking for options here in Canada, and I realized that there was not much going on. And I started reaching out to the few companies that were out there, but they were also starting. So it was really hard to find a position at that moment. But all these people were so supportive, and we realized that we needed to start building a community here in Canada if we wanted the field to grow. So literally, we just started brainstorming ideas, and we thought that starting a not-for-profit was maybe the best way to start that, to start strengthening the field and promoting the field here in Canada. And that's how I came involved in the field, and here I am.
That's awesome. There's so much I want to get into how the actual the cultivation of this meat occurs. So, from my understanding, you get these stem cells from. Is it stem cells that you get from the animals, or is it just all cells?
Well, basically, what we need for starting this process are, in general, they are stem cells. There are different types of stem cells, but those are the ones that are normally used for starting the production
Right.
of culture meat.
And so, walk me through this process. You go to an animal and you withdraw some blood, however you do that, with a syringe or whatever that may be. And then what do you do with that?
Yeah, so basically, normally you obtain the cells, let's say, there's different processes. So one is by obtaining a tiny sample from the animal, which is called a biopsy, and that's something that is normally done also in humans as well when they need to look for certain diseases. For example, they take samples of tissue, and they are really, really small samples. So in theory, the animal it's not harmed at all during this process. The interesting part as well is that depending on the company or the researcher, samples can also be withdrawn from, for example, an egg, or there are some researchers that have been using even a feather to withdraw the
Wow.
initial samples. So that's just to give an idea of how harmless the process is. And once you have that sample, what you do is you isolate some cells, and those are the stem cells. Now, there are different types of stem cells, and all of them have advantages and disadvantages based on, it's really depending on the process that scientists are following. But let's say that one type of stem cells are called myosatellites, and those are stem cells that are found within the muscle tissue. And one of their main characteristics is that these cells allow us to, they can multiply and produce more more muscle cells. So these myosatellite cells are already muscle cells that can divide into more muscle cells, and that will help us produce more tissue at the end. Now, one of the advantages of using myosatellites during the process is that they are already differentiated. But one of the disadvantages is that they have just a certain amount of dividing processes that they can achieve. So at some point, these cells, let's say they age and they can't multiply anymore. So that's a disadvantage, because what we want is huge quantities of cells to produce massive amounts of meat. So scientists are also looking at other type of stem cells, which are, let's call neutral cells. I call them neutral cells because they can differentiate in any type of cell that we want. They can differentiate into skin, into muscle, into fat. So those are great because then we can they can multiply several times, way more than myosatellite cells. But the problem is that because they can be differentiated in so many different types of tissues, it's hard to control them, and um, like they are not so stable. So that's one of the challenges of using those kind of cells. So right now, scientists are actually trying to figure out what's the best way to go, which type of cells are the best in terms of allowing us to produce massive amounts. And that's actually part of the research that is going through to figuring out how to produce stable cell lines that will allow us to produce huge quantities of cells at the end.
Right. I wonder if, as you were talking about the issue with one of those stem cells being um, the aging process, I wonder if like the work of like Dr. David Sinclair with like the reversal of aging will come in, where you might mix in those stem cells with some NMN or NAD or resveratrol to try to reverse the aging, then the stem cells can last longer. But so is this grown in like a petri dish type situation? Like, or is this, because I've seen photos and it's like literally big barrels, like beer, like factories.
Yeah, I mean, right now the process, when you are starting to work or working in research, the processes are confined to lab spaces, right? So every first step of a process like this one requires lab work, and a lot of these cells start to be grown in petri dishes, so in tiny round dishes. That is what a lot of people see in the pictures.
Mm.
But once everything starts scaling up, it's not going to be feasible to continue growing those cells in those tiny dishes. So you will need bigger, what we call bioreactors to grow the cells. And those bioreactors are pretty similar to what you see in breweries right now. So that's something that a lot of people talk about and make reference to, is like we could have these brewery-like facilities in the cities to produce meat, which will be really similar to the facilities that we have for producing beer, for example.
What like conditions are they trying to replicate inside these breweries or inside the petri dishes? What life, like how to grow up in an animal? Like if you take like a stem cell of a cow, are they trying to replicate a cow's biosystem?
Yeah, that's exactly what really needs to be done. And the role of these huge bioreactors, um, though, it's going to be to resemble and to provide all the conditions the cells need to grow, similar to what happens in either the human body or the body of a cow. So in our body, let's think about our body. All our cells are nourished by our blood vessels. So that's the way we provide the nutrients to the cells. And it happens the same in a cow. We have all these huge system of network of organs that provide all the nutrients. So we need something similar in order for the cells to, first of all, multiply and then differentiate into the type of cells that we want. We need to provide them with the nutrients, with the right signals, and with the right temperature, oxygen, all the different requirements so that they can grow healthy. And that's what bioreactors will do. They will provide that environment for the cells to thrive.
That's awesome. And then like based on that, we could really like when you have this thing that's trying to replicate like the temperature and whatever else it does, could it like really couldn't we put in like vitamin B12 and like vitamin D3, and could we put in extra nutrients into this bioreactor so that when the final product comes, it comes as a healthier version?
Yeah, That's one of the advantages of using cellular agriculture to produce not only meat, but all these other type of food products, is that it would allow us to tailor the products to what we want or what we need. So as you were saying, for example, if we want to add a certain vitamin, it's going to be possible. And I know right now there's a couple of researchers that are working on that, on how to tailor the mechanisms in the cells or in the process itself, so that we can have other nutrients added or produced during the process as well. Or, for example, control the amount of cholesterol as well that we could have in the meat as well. So yeah, this is one of the great advantages of this new technology.
And then I was just going to ask about cholesterol because you did mention it. Would it be possible to just completely remove it?
I'm not sure completely if we could. Technically, it would be possible, I guess, because we're producing the cells. Like right now, most of them are focused on muscle cells. But technically, you could tailor the fat tissue as well to contain, I guess, whatever type of nutrients you want. I'm not sure if completely you will be able to remove the cholesterol itself, because it's part of the texture or the
Yeah.
nutritional value of meat, but it may be possible to reduce the amount.
Right. Okay. That would be helpful at least. And then,
Yeah.
so theoretically, could different particular, and excuse me for my euphemism, I don't like using them, but theoretically, you could grow like pork ribs, chicken wings, any of these different foods, or like ribeyes, all of them. Could that be done?
Theoretically, it would be possible. I think one of the biggest challenges right now is creating that 3D structure that we can find, for example, in a steak, because that's a more complex three-dimensional structure that needs to be achieved. So right now, most of the products that are being produced are basically processed products. For example, a burger or a nugget that you don't really have a defined structure. It's like ground meat, let's say.
Mm.
And if we talk, for example, a chicken wing or a steak, we don't only have the muscle tissue, we have the marbling of the fat, we have even bones sometimes, and a lot of connective tissue that keeps that structure that we see. So right now, that's one of the biggest challenges, and that's a lot of what researchers are trying to achieve, that type of structure.
Yeah, well, yeah. I wonder if it's almost like, and I'm just looking completely uneducated on the topic, but if it's like you give like a 3D printing machine the ingredients instead of like the ink or the plastic, whatever it makes it from, the actual cultured meat, and then it just prints like a chicken wing kind of thing. That would be really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and there's actually some companies, they are focused right now on plant-based, but they are using 3D printing to create that 3D structure. So some other researchers and companies are also working on using 3D printing and just adapt it for culture meat as well. I haven't really seen any release of or any news about if they are already doing that type of product, but I've heard that they are trying to combine 3D printing with culture meat as well technology, and that would be really cool to see something
Mm,
like that.
I was totally onto something. I knew it. I knew it. Um, I want to talk about, so this is possible to feed humans. Is it possible to then use this as well as pet food?
Yeah, there's actually companies that are working on that. They are using culture meat technology to produce pet food. One of there's two, yeah, like two companies that I've heard about. One of them is Because Animals, and they are actually working on a cat treat using micelles. So they are one of the companies working on pet food, and I think we're looking forward to see their cat treat. They had a sample already released, so and they are hoping to have that product soon in the market as well.
That would be awesome because I'm thinking like theoretically it wouldn't be too hard because I know all animals need, or the basic ingredient would be like carnitine, and then just making sure they have the other nutrients, which if they cultivate from like fish, like for cats, like do you cultivate fish as well, or is it only like land mammals?
No, there's also companies working on seafood and seafood, and some of them are focusing on tuna, salmon. One company in Singapore is actually working on shrimp, for example. So there's also culture fish companies out there.
That's so cool. And then at the beginning, you did mention dairy and eggs. Is that the same process in which you get a stem cell sample from like a egg and try to cultivate literal eggs?
No, so in the case of eggs and some dairy products, and I'm saying some dairy products because for that they are using both technologies, but let's focus on the one that you're talking about. Dairy and eggs are normally they use cultures of microorganisms, so either bacteria or yeasts. And what happens is that you get the gene that codifies for the proteins, the most important proteins for those products. So let's think about dairy and let's think about casein, for example. So you insert that gene into the microorganisms, and then the microorganism will express that gene and produce a protein, which is a casein. And then you harvest or you filter that casein and you use it to produce dairy products. So there's a company, for example, in California that is called Perfect Day, and they are already commercializing an ice cream using this technology. And it is called fermentation because it's similar to we're using microorganisms in the same way or a similar way as we use them for fermenting other type of products. So this way you obtain the protein and you can use it to produce any dairy, in this case, dairy products. And it's a similar process to the one that other companies are using to produce proteins from egg as
Okay.
well.
So we've pretty much touched on every group of animal products, I think, in my mind. Is there any animal product that you say wouldn't be possible with cellular ag?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think let's talk about the products that are or companies that are working right now in Celac. So we have companies working on dairy, companies working on egg, meat, different types of meat. There's companies working even trying to produce leather as well or pelt. So I would say technically you should be able to produce almost any type of animal product using either tissue engineering or fermentation based technologies.
That's freaking awesome. I didn't know about the clothing industry getting in on this as well.
Yes, there's these companies that are working on that. They are maybe not you don't hear much about it, but there are
Mm,
companies.
that's awesome. And then when you said you need to collect like these stem cells or biopsies of these animals, is it possible, one day in the future to eventually have so much stem cells from or biopsies from the animals that you can remove the animal completely from the equation?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the main goals of the ultimate goal of cellular agriculture is to completely be a technology independent from animals. And I think one of the challenges that scientists are facing right now is trying to reach or trying to have those cell lines stable enough that they won't need to keep obtaining samples from the animals. So that's part of a lot of research that is going on right now, trying to create those stocks of cells and keep them as stable as possible, so that they don't require to be taking the samples straight from animals all the time.
So, how does the cost of work pair against raising cattle when you're looking at cellular ag?
Uh, that's a really good question. And I think costs, when we talk about cost, I try to see it not only from the um, economical perspective, but also from the social and environmental perspective, which I think also is important to consider on costs. So if we look in terms of money, I think the first burger that was created was around um, $300,000, and I think if we think about that in terms, I think it was in pounds originally, like 250 pounds, the burger. And right now, the cost of that burger has been reduced to almost 9 pounds because of all the advances that scientists have done to reduce the cost of production. So that first burger was showcased in 2013. So it's almost 7 years since that first burger was showcased. And they've done so many there's been so many breakthroughs through all these 7 years that has helped to reduce that cost of production. Right, like now, if we think about the environmental or the social cost as well, let's think that for producing meat in the traditional way, we need so much land and water and natural resources. I was reading, and it takes like right now, 3/4 of the land on Earth are used for agriculture, which is impressive. Those amounts of land. So if we think about the impact that current agriculture methods have, not only in the environment, but also, for example, in animal welfare, it's immense, it's huge, and cellular agriculture can definitely help to reduce that impact that we're having on the environment. And now we talk from the social perspective. I think that's also important. Um, Here in the US and in Canada as well, right now with the pandemic, we've heard a lot of issues in slaughterhouses with the people that are working there. And I think we have a great opportunity right now with cellular agriculture as well to try to rethink the way we are producing our food, and how can we make a better um, improve the quality of our food system in general, not only for the people that were eating all the products, but also for the people that are working in this system as well.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many issues with raising animals. It's just insane. Like, how long does the process of getting this biopsy from the animal to actually producing that cultivated meat final product take? Like, how long in terms of duration?
Yeah, I think the process also, that the time, it's relative, and I think it depends on each company or each scientist how long it takes. But let's say an estimate of 4 to 6 weeks it might take to from cells to a final product. So if we compare that with, for example, how long it takes to raise a cow, which I
Mm,
think it's around 18 months until a cow is fully grown. It's considerable the amount of time, the reduction in time that we could achieve by producing meat using cellular agriculture.
for sure. And I think it's important to understand the absolute limitation with growing a cow. Like, you can't, to a certain extent, you can't make that cow grow any quicker. But in the future, you could probably make that cultivated meat in a week or 2 weeks,
Yes,
depending on the technologies that become available. I don't see any limitation to that.
I guess right now there's a lot of still of unknowns in the field, and I think that's something really important that people needs to be aware. And the reason is because the technology is relatively new. So as the science and the research continues to evolve, there's a lot of opportunities for the field to improve and be better, right? So right now, I think it's super important that we support basic research, because that's what is going to help us to fill out all these gaps that still exist, and trying to find different ways in which we can improve the process. Right now, there's still no product at scale. So there's still a lot of things that we don't really know, and that we need to wait until that that level is achieved where we can produce massive amounts, and then we will be able to see what things are, if all the theoretical things that have been published or said are going to be true or not. So let's say that there's still a lot of room for improvement, and the field has so much potential.
I want to know who got to eat that $300,000 burger.
I'm not sure. There was it's in YouTube, actually, that video, and it was a showcase, and only selected people were invited to see it. I'm not sure. I don't remember the name of the person that tried it, but you can definitely find that video.
That would be it for sure top like the list of like the top 10 most expensive burgers. Like that's
Yes.
just stupid.
Yes, I think one of the things that I wish I could is be closer to those companies that are right now showcasing all the products, because it would be amazing to be able to try one of those products.
We'll all be able to eventually,
Yes.
I guess. It's just a matter of being first or last.
Exactly.
What you spoke a bit about this earlier, but what are the current limitations in the field of cellular ag?
Yeah, I think there's still several things that scientists are working on. One of them, as I was mentioning, is the having cell lines that are stable enough to multiply and let us help us achieve the massive quantities. Other limitation that companies are already working, and I think they are starting to overcome it, is the culture media that is needed for the cells to grow. So this is like a nutritious broth that is going to contain all the nutrients and all the elements that cells need to grow and to multiply and to differentiate. So originally, this culture media that was used in research contained an element that is called fetal bovine serum, which is extracted from a calf, like an unborn calf. So technically, it's not a really humane process to obtain it. So a lot of companies or researchers were trying to get rid of this element that was part of the culture media. One of the main reasons why this FBS, as we call it, is really important is because it has a lot of important elements that help the cells thrive during when they are growing. So right now, there's a lot of companies already working on trying to replace FBS and use instead maybe plant components or components obtained from microbial processes as well, so that we could get rid of the FBS during the production process. And because of this process of obtaining the FBS, it also made it really, really expensive. And that was one of the reasons why the first products were so expensive, because they needed huge amounts of this FBS for producing bigger amounts of cells. Currently, as I was saying, there's already a lot of companies that are already working without FBS that found a way to replace it, and that's why the cost of the products is going down.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, could vegetables also be cellular agged? Like, you know what I mean? Could you create a vegetable?
Yeah, and there was a research institute in Finland, and they started producing vegetables vegetables using cellular agriculture. Um, they didn't have, again, the structure, the defined structure of a veggie. They were more like jams, the texture of a jam. But I was
Right.
really impressed when I saw that, because they actually produced these and they were working on a small machine. I think they call it Salpod. Yeah, if I remember correctly, they call it Salpod, and it was a tiny machine, almost like a do-it-your-own, where they were trying to grow these cells. I don't know if they were able to continue working on this project, but that makes it that's really interesting, just because, as I was saying, you can produce almost anything using cellular
Yeah.
agriculture.
I'd be fascinating. Like back to the limitations thing. I think a limitation where it can kind of fall on the hands of like us, like as everyday people, would be the doing the PR work, like educating the public. Because I feel like in a way, and I'm sure it's not true for a lot of people, but when you get discussing, you think people think that, well, it's for those people who think meat is natural, although the process that actually has to go through these days is anything but. You'll be arguing that this is playing God, and this is, but like when you look at the what you mentioned before, the environmental, the socioeconomic, the financial benefits of cultured meat are so gargantuan in what they can do for the planet. I think one of the limitations falls within the PR, and that's what we can do as humans is get educated, get excited, and start educating the public. And most likely will be the older generations that will be like, "This ain't natural, sonny boy."
Yes, no, that's totally true. And I think one of the main challenges that we've always faced with food is that uh, I feel a lot of people don't link food with technology. And it is important to think that technology has been an important part of our food system since years and years and years
Mm,
ago. If we think, for example, about pasteurization, that's technology that was implemented and helped us to actually have a lot of the products that we consume right now. If we think about dehydration, or even simple processes like freezing, canning, all those are technologies that have been implemented to the food system. And obviously, as technology evolves, those type of processes start also to evolve. And it might seem sometimes really unnatural to think about technology in the food, but no, it's not, and has been used forever. And right now we're doing something similar. We're using technology and science to help us solve one of the biggest issues that we're facing, which is,
mm,
how are we going to feed a growing population? I think it's important to think that our planet is not going to grow. Like, we're not going to get more land or more water, and we need to feed approximately 10 billion people in 2050. How are we going to do that? So that's a problem that we are all facing, and if we can use right now technology to help us solve this issue, I think it's good, and we need to try to find a way to just communicate it and be transparent and just talk about it.
for sure. And I think what's also interesting in limitation, it's got to be like governments in a certain way, like allowing these technologies to actually come. Because I'm sure some are more open than others. You got people like Justin Trudeau donating money to Cellular Ag. I think it was like 100 million or something that he gave to the industry to help fund some scientists or whatever it is. And you've got other governments that might not be so open. Do you think like politically this could be a bit of an issue?
Just to clarify that, the money that the government here in Canada has been really supportive of plant-based, which is a process
Right.
completely different to cellular agriculture. So far here in Canada, we haven't seen directly support like funding from the government for CELAC. And that's something that we're really hoping that in the near future we can achieve, just because of the potential it has. So I believe a lot of governments are being really supportive of the technology. We've seen, for example, governments from Singapore, Japan, and Israel, I think, they've been giving funds for research in cellular agriculture, because they feel and they know the potential that this field has. Food security and climate change are priorities around the world. And they know that cellular agriculture can be a solution to those issues that we're facing right now. So I think the more these technologies is growing, the more governments might be willing to support it as well. And we are really hoping that we can achieve that also here in Canada.
And I know a few companies, like meat companies, have actually invested in alternatives as well, which is quite interesting. Would you say like the meat, dairy, and egg industry are going to put up a bit of a fight, or do you reckon they'll join and have both products?
Something that we need to think about cellular agriculture not as not as really competing, because we need to find a way to complement our actual food, the amount of food that we're producing, right? We don't have more land and we don't have more resources to keep producing the food in the same way that we're producing. However, we are going to have an increasing population. So what are we going to do to fill out that gap of food that we need? So cellular agriculture is going to be an option, an alternative to fill that gap that we're going to have. So in theory, if you think about it, we are going to need to still be producing food. And right now, the way we're doing it is not going to be able to keep with the demand that we're going to have. So it's not that we're trying to, or the cellular agriculture is trying to compete. It's more than trying to collaborate with the actual players right now. And all of us try to feed the world. That's how I would put it.
Well, I guess the easiest way to tackle the issues that you could potentially have is to actually join forces with them, kind of in a way, because they have logistically all the knowledge, financially they have all the money, they've got the big politicians, they know how to, do all these things. So it'd be a lot easier. And I hope it does go that way and we don't have a fight in our hands. And because, as much as they're I'll say the word crap industry, they're quite powerful and influential. And I think that could really help the movement.
Yeah, I think the way I see it is that if we're all able to collaborate, this is an issue. Climate change in general and food security is an issue that affects everyone. It doesn't matter if you are a politician. It doesn't matter if you are a farmer. It doesn't matter who we are. Like, it's something that is going to affect everyone the same way. So I think we all have our strengths, and each stakeholder has its strengths. And if we are able to work all together, we can find a solution that is going to be the most optimum for everyone. So I think there's no who is better or not. Is how we all can work together to solve this big issue that is going to affect all of us. And by working all together, I feel that we are going to be able to improve and come with a better food system than the one that we have. Right now, we're seeing that food system is not working, and we're suffering the consequences of a system that is flawed. How can we do better? And I think this is an opportunity that we have to do that.
For sure. And at the beginning, you did mention Cellular Agriculture Canada, which is your little baby. It's your love project. Can you talk to us about what that is?
Yeah, sure. So Cellular Agriculture Canada, or CAC as I call it, is a not-for-profit organization. And we started working officially last year. And our two main goals are increasing public awareness, which is something that we've been talking about, of how important it is to talk about this and share the benefits of cellular agriculture with the people. And our second goal is to advocate for fair policies. So trying to also connect with the different stakeholders, including the government, and trying to find ways where we can support the industry or the field in general. So those are our two main goals. We've been really happy to see how it's grown in this past year. And we're really having a lot of projects, outreach projects, because I feel that one of the main challenges that we have is, as you said, that people might not know about the field. And we need that in order to strengthen the field and to make people aware of the benefits.
For sure. It's such an awesome cause. Before we get to where we can find you guys, this has been a really packed conversation. And was there any bit of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with that we potentially didn't get to, or something that you're maybe passionate about that we didn't have a chance to talk about?
Well, I think an important message is to think about we only have one planet, and in order to solve some of the biggest issues that we're facing, we will need all hands on deck. We all have a role to play here, and I think the more we can spread the word about these new technologies, the better for everyone, as I guess.
Perfect. And where can we find you guys?
Well, we have our website, and we are also pretty active on social media. So you can follow us on Instagram as well, subscribe to our newsletter. We have webinars that we run as well. So if you want to get more information about it, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or subscribe to our newsletters.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. It's been nothing but a delight. There's so much that we touched on, and I can't wait, for this industry to evolve, because, this episode is one of those that I don't think will be evergreen. Like, the basics will be there, but in a year's time, the industry could completely change, which is great. And I hope this episode becomes outdated, because that means, one, I get a chance to get you back on to talk about what's new, but two, it means we're really running in the same direction.
Yeah, exactly. It's been amazing, and I'm really hoping that in a couple of years we can hear completely different news, and that the industry is growing so fast. When from a couple of years ago, there were only 5 companies. Right now, there are around 50 companies working in the field around the world. So it's been exploding, and I think that's good news for the field and for everyone as well.
Awesome. Well, I'll have to catch you on the flip side. I hope you stay safe, and I hope you continue doing some amazing work. Thank you once again, Yadira.
Thank you so much, Tom, for inviting me.
Hello. Welcome to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening the whole way through. I really appreciate the time that you've spent out of your busy day to help educate yourself on ways that we can tackle big issues that we're facing today. Thank you once again to Yadira for helping us out and sharing the knowledge that she has. If you want to support her or find her work, I'll leave all the links in the show notes. Like always, I can't wait for this podcast, to be not evergreen, because, in a year's time, this space could totally evolve. As a reminder, if you do appreciate the conversation, a review on iTunes or any app that you're listening on is absolutely amazing and really helps us get the word out about all the topics that we're covering. We are, of course, on Instagram at plant.paradigm, and Twitter and TikTok and really all the good things. For those on YouTube, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And for those listening, just a side note, we are on YouTube. For those visually inclined, that might be an option for you. That might make this experience a bit better. But other than that, I hope you guys all have an amazing day, week, month, year. and I'll see you in the next episode.